Today's episode has something for everyone. We've got ice cream, martinis, Doritos, seaweed, ketchup, and fried rice. Oh man, it's gonna be good. Wait, did I mention we also have Kenji? Today's story starts in 1908 when chemist Kikune Ikeda extracted a compound from kombu, or giant sea kelp. He had isolated crystals of glutamic acid, and those crystals provided the super savory, mouth-filling taste we know today as umami. A year later, he figured out how to mass produce a sodium salt form of glutamic acid known as monosodium glutamate, MSG. It wasn't until as recently as 2000 that molecular biologists were able to identify the taste receptors for glutamate, but identify them they did. Umami is the fifth taste, along with salty, sweet, sour, and bitter. Glutamate-rich ingredients show up in cuisines across the globe, and also way back in time. The ancient Roman fish sauce known as garum would have been packed with umami. Here is just a small selection of seriously umami-rich foods and ingredients. Kombu, katsuobushi or bonito flakes, Marmite, Parmesan cheese, nori, soy sauce, fish sauce, oyster sauce, anchovies, tomato paste, and ketchup. Yum. Some foods naturally contain relatively high levels of glutamate. So here we're talking about kombu, tomatoes, mushrooms, and potatoes, and many more. Things like tomato paste and ketchup are high on the yum scale, largely because the naturally occurring glutamate in the fresh tomatoes has been concentrated by removing water. But most of the big glutamate players have achieved their elite status thanks to fermentation and the breakdown of proteins into their amino acid building blocks, specifically into glutamic acid. Here, I'm talking about things like soy sauce, fermented bean paste, and fish sauce. Each starts with a rich protein source, either soybeans or fish, that gets transformed into a sauce or paste that is awash in savory glutamate. Now, up to this point, I'm sure some of you are like, Dan, I already know all this stuff. I'm the queen of glutamate. Okay. Well, first off, it's a pleasure to meet you, Your Highness. Second, let's go a little bit deeper then. Glutamate is pretty powerful, but just like the rest of us, it gets much stronger when it has help from a friend or two. In the case of glutamate, those friends are a couple of cool nucleotides called inosinate and guanylate. Now, we talked about how a couple of receptors on our tongue are tuned specifically to the glutamate radio station. They send signals of savoriness to our brain when glutamate shows up. If one of those nucleotides happens to be in your mouth at the same time as the glutamate, something pretty amazing happens. The nucleotides actually change the shape of the glutamate receptor, allowing it to send even stronger savory signals to the brain. Think of it as switching from AM radio to HD audio. And that's not even an exaggeration. When glutamate and these nucleotides are present in about equal amounts in food, the strength of umami is as much as 20 to 30 times greater. There's only one word for that, and that is synergy? I mean, yeah, I guess it's synergy, but I was looking for like a wow or awesome, maybe even like a cowabunga. Whatever, I ruined the whole moment. The point is, it's pretty awesome synergy. Take a look at this chart. On the left are foods rich in glutamate, and on the right are foods rich in these nucleotides. If you pair one from the left and one from the right, you are taking advantage of this synergy. Dashi combines glutamate-rich kombu seaweed with nucleotide-rich bonito flakes, while a Caesar salad features the synergy of anchovies, which contain a big hit of these nucleotides, and glutamate-packed Parmesan cheese. Even the humble cheeseburger, where cheese provides glutamate and the beef supplies the nucleotides, puts this amazing science into practice. Snack food makers know this science really well, and they use it to make chips that are basically impossible to stop eating. Doritos, for example, contain monosodium glutamate and isolated forms of these nucleotides. They show up on the package as disodium inosinate and disodium guanylate. Man, what a savory world we live in, huh? Okay, that is plenty of talk for now. I too get better with the help of friends, and I was thrilled to have some time in the kitchen with my bud, Kenji Lopez-Alt, or as you all know him, Kenji. We talked umami, MSG, and wok cooking, and we had such a good time and covered so much ground that I'm sharing a lot of our convo mostly uninterrupted by me. Mostly. Let's go to the kitchen. First off, I was really interested to know Kenji's personal connection to umami and MSG. I also really wanted to know how Kenji uses glutamate-rich ingredients in his own cooking, so I laid out a bunch of them for him.
All right, so I mean, down the line, like kombu, that's like, so kombu is where MSG was first synthesized from, right, in 1908 or something.
Yep.
So yeah, it's very MSG rich, and this is the base ingredient for dashi, which I use a lot of at home.
Yep.
So like if I'm cooking Western food, what I'll often do is I'll add either straight MSG, or sometimes I'll add, I add either Marmite or fish sauce or soy sauce, and like those kinds of flavors, You can put them into something heavy like a beef stew or a chili, and at least I find, and you might be more sensitive than me, but I find that you don't really taste them in there. You just get this umami boost if you have those things around and you don't have pure MSG. This katsuobushi is the other ingredient in dashi. I think, the theory is that the inosinic acid in the fish products, fish and dried shellfish and dried fish have glutamic acid and inosinic acid, and the theory is that inosinic acid is like a multiplier. Right? And so when you have them together, that's why you do the shaved fish and the kelp, because they boost each other's umami-ness. Yeah.
But what I find really interesting, and the reason I have these Doritos here, is like this is really known stuff in the food manufacturing world, right?
Right.
Like for a lot of people, they don't think about inosinic acid, and they might be more familiar with glutamates, but these guys have mastered it.
Oh yeah.
And you can even see on the packaging, like it's got monosodium glutamate pretty up high, and then further down it's got the disodium inosinate, and another one, the guanylate. And so like they're basically just crafting this super umami, super savory thing that ends up being really like, you don't want to stop eating it because it tastes so good. But I love that you can use it kind of in your own cooking.
They have it literally to a science.
They literally have
the crap out of this. Yeah.
While we took a little break to eat Doritos because, well, who can look at Doritos and not eat them? I grabbed some unseasoned homemade chicken broth for a little science experiment. Given that we were both pretty big science guys, I figured it'd be easy peasy to put together and do. But then we had to do like a lot of math. So we have a really basic chicken broth here. This is just some chicken wings simmered in water for about 30 minutes. And so I thought we could use this as a fun experiment to show kind of the impact of salt and then the impact of MSG by kind of dividing it out. So we're gonna leave this one plain.
Okay,
and
control.
That's gonna be our control. For this one, we're gonna add just salt. So we're gonna go with 3 grams.
3 grams to 150?
Yep, to 150 mils.
Yeah, 2% is what you would salt it to at like a restaurant where you want people to drink more beer.
So we've got 3 grams of salt going into that.
Okay.
So the next one we're gonna go salt and MSG.
Okay.
So we're gonna do 0.75 grams of MSG to start.
So 0.7, so we're going with a quarter the amount of MSG as salt.
And so it's obviously a lot less than what we're gonna do for salt there.
Yeah.
And then we just wanna make up for that sodium that we're missing from the salt.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna add still the 3 grams of sodium to here, but then we'll need to add, MSG has a third the amount of sodium of table salt by weight. So for the added 0.75 grams of MSG here, we actually need to add, are we gonna subtract from the table salt here, or are we gonna add to the table salt again?
I think probably subtract. If we think that's the right one, so subtract it. So
yeah, so we'll subtract a quarter of a gram.
So we're gonna do 2.75.
2.75 of salt.
Yeah,
0.75 of MSG. That makes it the same amount of sodium. MSG and salt, like they both once they're dissolved, the sodium comes out and they both dissociate, and the sodium is the same sodium.
Right,
It's just sodium.
We're doing great. All right, so we've done some really hard math. And now we've loaded them up. So this is plain, this is our control, it's completely unseasoned.
Right.
In this one we have salt to the level that we want. We have salt and MSG here. And
same level of sodium.
Same level of sodium, so we're matching that. And then here we have just MSG. We're not matching the sodium because to get that level, it would be so much MSG in there.
Yeah.
And probably wouldn't be a good representation. So this is awesome. All right, let's taste through. I've got a tasting spoon for you there. And maybe we just talk about what we're tasting.
Smells like chicken.
Smells like chicken. It does taste like chicken. Like there's definitely chicken flavor underneath there.
Yeah. I almost get more like sweetness than any kind of savoriness. It's a little bit savory, not salty at all.
And do you think it tastes a little bit sweeter because you're used to having something like that with salt? And so
maybe it's just like
balance?
the filter in my brain that's telling me it's sweet, because I'm expecting it to be salty. I don't know. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see how much it changes with a little salt added to it. A lot of salt added to it. That's really good though.
It's a lot of salt.
It was a lot of salt. It's definitely more chickeny than the first one.
Yeah, for sure.
You
can easily taste it.
Totally apparent there. So after agreeing that it was a lot of salt, we decided to dilute them all to the same level using the unseasoned broth. That way they'd be comparable, but not overtly salty. You're all following along, right? It's a little bit less salty. Still pretty salty.
That's still pretty salty. Surprising.
It is. It was still pretty salty, but we kept plugging along. They were also tasting this at like a slightly warmer than room temperature.
Yeah.
Whereas like a soup like that, we'd probably want like 180, 190.
Yeah, so you get more aroma coming out.
Yeah, and I think your threshold for salt cuts off at that point, right?
Yeah.
Like we taste
It
best
would
in like
taste,
this
yeah, it
little
would taste
range.
salty, less salty when it's hotter.
Is there salt in MSG?
Yeah, so for me, I don't know if it's the same for you, but for me, again, like it's that sort of filling the back of your mouth flavor.
Yep.
You know, where like it's like hits you in the salivary glands.
One thing I also notice here is like the length of the taste after you've swallowed it is much,
Lingers
much longer,
yeah,
right?
way longer.
Longer flavor. That's what we're after today. All right, so let's go with this one, which is just MSG. See what the effect is to not have any salt in the mix.
I still get some of that sweetness that I got in the first one, for sure.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the flavors are the same as in the first one, but maybe it's a little longer.
Yeah, what I'm wondering is like, am I actually tasting like more chickeny flavor? Where like with the salt one, I definitely was tasting more chickeny flavor.
Right.
With this one, am I just tasting MSG and also there's chicken flavor involved?
Yeah.
If that makes
Yeah,
sense?
like do you need them both for it to have any positive effect?
Yeah. I would argue yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's certainly not a salt replacement.
Yeah.
I do think this stock with MSG tastes better than plain stock.
Stock.
It's not like leaving the salt out of your food, you know?
Right,
It's
right,
like you need the salt if you want it to taste good.
The difference between like a baseline and something that like takes it up to that.
Exactly,
next
exactly. So it's
flavor.
like a nice addition, but if I didn't taste them side by side, would I miss it?
Yeah.
In you know, especially in like a more complex dish, maybe.
And we finally came to some conclusions. So, all of that math aside, that was a fun little experiment that definitely allowed us to analyze the impact of salt and MSG on how we taste food. My takeaway, which is by no means groundbreaking, is that salt is a must, as it brings out the flavor of everything around it. MSG can add a rich layer of savory depth and mouthfulness and works well with salt. MSG on its own can improve a dish, but it won't get you all the way there. As Kenji put it, it's not a salt replacement. Okay, so we've already come a long way with MSG today, but there's a big question that we haven't even addressed yet. It's one that is asked about MSG a lot, and that is it even safe to eat? I checked with Kenji for his thoughts and analysis of the published studies.
Yeah, I mean, so MSG is a difficult one to discuss because it has this history that's fraught with racism that started with racism and got a lot of people afraid of eating at Chinese restaurants, even falsely associated MSG use with Chinese restaurants, even though it's used everywhere. Like every snack you've ever had has MSG. My general outlook on anybody who claims they have any kind of sensitivity to something is just believe them, right?
Yeah.
Like, if they don't want it, don't give it to them. Does it matter? Maybe it's psychosomatic. In some cases, it probably is. There are studies that show that in many cases, it probably is psychosomatic, right? Does it matter? It still bothers them. So, you should still respect that. It's pretty clear that there's no effect from MSG through straight ingestion, right? So if you take it in a pill form, it dissolves in your stomach, goes into your bloodstream through the stomach. No effects. The place where there might be some kind of issue is in oral ingestion. So when people eat food with it or drink a liquid with it, people who say that they're sensitive to it or have had these sort of MSG, what they call MSG symptom complex, which may or may not be related to MSG. But people who claim to have gotten those do get them slightly higher than placebo percentage in the studies I've seen. But the issue is that those studies are really difficult to control because you have to be taking the MSG orally, and even when you try and hide it, you can still taste MSG.
Right, like what we were just doing here.
Yeah, exactly. So the people who claim to be susceptible to MSG also probably know when they're drinking MSG. So is it nocebo? Is it in their head? Is it, who knows?
Yeah.
There's like a huge amount of observational evidence for this, and there's not a lot of sort of lab evidence to try and parse out what is what. And we should continue studying it, both to figure out, is this actually MSG related or is it just something MSG adjacent? Like MSG often comes with a lot of other, peanut oil, things like that.
Potential allergens.
Potential allergens, other things that you might be sensitive, or some combination of ingredients that you might be sensitive. So I think we need to figure out exactly what's going on, because there clearly are people who are getting some kind of symptom. We don't, whether it's MSG or not, who knows? But
yeah, that's good. I mean, it's definitely a balanced take in terms of understanding, and I really like your takeaway that it's, if it bothers you, and even if it's a placebo situation, like that's real, and you should follow that.
Yeah, and don't call someone a liar about how they're feeling.
Don't call people liars. I think that's good advice throughout life. So Kenji's take on the research is, of course, just that, his take. You can have your take, I can have mine. At Cooks Illustrated, we've long held the stance that MSG is completely safe. And part of what factors into that conclusion is that in studies, any reported symptoms, whether real or perceived, are both localized, as Kenji mentioned, and don't have lasting effects. Which is a good thing, because MSG, whether in its isolated form or naturally found in everything from Parmesan cheese and seaweed to mushrooms and tomatoes, is pretty hard to avoid. And it's really, really tasty. I really wanted to see Kenji using MSG in action and do some wok cooking, so it's fried rice time.
You have, this is a Western style range.
Yep.
And one of the issues with cooking with a wok on a Western style range is that they have a lot of them. Well, some of them have sort of star-shaped things. Some of them have interior burners, but a lot of them have a diffuser that spreads the flame out, which is exactly what you want on a Western style skillet,
yep.
right? Because you want that wide, even heat. But on a wok, you actually generally want the heat concentrated a little bit more below. So I do, I try to preheat. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little bit of oil, just a teeny bit, and rub it in. And that's basically gonna be my temperature indicator. I know, when I was at ATK, and I don't know if this is still the case with the way you word your recipes, but most recipes started with putting the oil in the skillet first and then preheating it.
Exactly, yep.
So that way you can tell, like at 300 degrees it's gonna be shimmering,
yep,
right? At
yep.
400, whatever, it's gonna start smoking. I used to try and do that method with the wok. It doesn't actually work in wok cooking because generally you're preheating your wok to temperatures that are way higher than that. You're getting up
yep.
to like 550, 600 degrees at least. And if you put all the oil you're gonna cook within there at the beginning and wait till you get to that temperature, that oil has been like smoking hard for a long time,
yep.
and it ends up tasting really bad.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So I put in just a teeny bit that I use as my sort of temperature indicator.
And you can kind of see, right, like a little bit of beating and that kind
of
stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm gonna let it go until it's pretty
fully
heavily smoking. Yeah, until it's fully smoking. Then I'm gonna add the oil I'm gonna cook with and immediately start cooking so that the oil doesn't get a chance to burn. All right, so we're gonna go with our eggs. The eggs, I preheat on high.
Yep.
And then I turn the heat down. Oil, we're gonna let that spread across the surface. We'll go in right in with our eggs and hopefully they won't stick. We'll see what happens.
So you're back up to high. You give it a little gentle.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, what can happen is the eggs can really brown really hard.
Yep.
But yeah, essentially non-stick.
That's awesome.
I'm just gonna cook this kind of on one side, give it a little turn. So I'm leaving them just slightly undercooked so that by the time, because they're gonna go back in the wok with the rice at the end.
A little more extra
so they are gonna harden a little bit more. All right, so now we're gonna start with our other ingredients.
And how long have you had this wok?
This wok I've only had for like a month.
Really?
This is like the 5th or 6th time I've used it.
Okay.
Because I got this wok specifically to travel with. So the only seasoning this wok has is I seasoned it once to begin. I scrubbed out the manufacturer's coating. I heated the whole thing once till it turned black. And then I've cooked with it like 3 or 4 times on an induction cooktop.
That's what I find so amazing about woks. And people are often think you have to get like a Grace Young style, like beautiful black
shiny black, yeah,
before it's even good to go on. But it's nonstick way before that.
Yeah, well, it's also so woks are different. When you say seasoning for a wok, it's not the same as seasoning for a Western style cast iron pan.
Yep.
So like a cast iron pan, it generally heats pretty evenly, and it's perfectly flat. It's easy for the seasoning to stay on, and so you build up these layers of polymers, right? The polymerized oil, and you build up these layers of sort of thick, glossy seasoning. With a wok, your heat is divided, right? So you're very hot at the bottom, and then it gets less and less around the edges. So you have this like built-in stress that's causing the metal to expand and contract at different rates, right?
Really,
and so it's really hard to build up that seasoning. Plus, you're frequently adjusting the heat from high to low, giving it these big temperature changes, and you're deglazing it all the time with sauces. So in a wok, you're not really going to see that same kind of, unless you do a very specific type of cooking, unless you're frequently stir frying very dry dishes or deep frying a lot. But you're generally not going to see the same kind of thick seasoning that you would see in a Western style cast iron skillet, which is fine. You don't need it.
Yeah, it kind of takes the pressure off that you have to like do this perfect thing. You're also using a lot of acidic ingredients too, which if left in contact can strip away a lot of that. I find mine like has very little around the outside, but obviously more at the center.
So you see, stir frying also, it should generally really be called toss frying. Because that tossing is sort of, you can get away with just stirring, if you don't want to practice the tossing, or if you're, the first few times you do it, if you just want to get the hang of it. But when you stir, you do want to use a kind of wide spatula like this and try and get things up and into the air. Because the idea is that, you know, the more time it spends in the air, the easier it is for moisture to evaporate from it. So with the wok, you know, the motion, so there's two things. There's tilting like this, right? And then there's translational, forward and back. So generally you're starting it with the wok towards you, tilt it away, you know, and then you translate it forward, and then you tilt it back, and then you pull it back towards you. And that's the motion that's gonna get all the food in the air. And the idea is that by doing that, you're heating the food in the sort of superheated bottom part of the wok, but then you're getting it up in the air so that moisture can evaporate.
That makes so much sense. All in the bottom there, it's just like super condensed. So you've got water, just all the interstitial parts, right? So
exactly.
Giving it that air time.
Exactly. So you see, I always have a bowl on the side for cooked ingredients so that I can cook in batches, and then at the very end, I'm gonna add everything back together.
Cool. Once Kenji was done with the egg and vegetables, he fried the rice, added the aromatics, then returned the egg to the wok and broke it up into bite-sized pieces before seasoning everything up. He used MSG in the eggs and then a final seasoning for the dish. Okay, it is time to eat. I am so hungry.
That was really good. And so I'm like a huge rice lover, so I like the fried rices that are seasoned a little bit more lightly, the kind of stuff that you talk about growing up. And here, you get all the rice, you get all the components, they taste fresh and really nice. And it's super meaty for something that, you know, doesn't have meat in it.
Yeah, well, it's got that, you know, the mushroom and the egg and the MSG.
That was so good. I can't thank Kenji enough for stopping by so we could do some pretty bad math, sort of scientific experiments together, and just dig in deep on all things umami. And he also fed me fried rice. Guess this was a pretty good day at work. But we're not done yet. I'm gonna hang in the kitchen for a little bit longer so I can show you a couple of incredible uses for MSG. First up, a cocktail. Now, real cocktail pros are probably gonna throw their coupe glasses at me for this, but I love a dirty martini. Love it. No, it's not the best way to taste gin and vermouth. Yes, it's the king of savory cocktails in my book. And I don't skimp on the olive brine. You could say I prefer a glass of olive juice with some gin in it. This couldn't be easier to put together. We'll start with 2 ounces of gin, 1 ounce of olive brine, a half an ounce of vermouth, and a pinch of MSG. I once used olive brine from a jar of olives that were seasoned with MSG, and it blew my mind. So now I add it to all my dirty martinis. I've also seen bartenders adding it to regular martinis and plenty of other cocktails. It's very cool. Is that good. So savory, so delicious. Now before I finish the rest of this, I have one more thing to show you. Chili crisp. The iconic Chinese brand Laogan put jarred chili crisp on the map, both in China and in over 30 countries around the world where it's sold. It provides the flavor known as ma la, which means numbing and hot, by combining Sichuan peppercorns and spicy chilies. But it also brings loads of texture with fried onion and fermented soybeans. And of course, loads of umami with MSG. There are lots of other great chili crisp brands out there to try. I particularly like one from Fly by Jing, but I'm getting way off track. You can also make your own chili crisp at home, which gives you full control of flavors and textures, and will also save you lots of money in the long run, because you're gonna wanna put this on everything. First, we combine Sichuan chili powder, peanuts, Sichuan peppercorns, salt, and MSG in a bowl, and top it with a strainer. Then we cook shallots in oil until deep golden brown, which takes about 10 minutes. We get the shallots out and the garlic in. Once that's brown, it goes to hang out with the shallot. Next, we add ginger, star anise, cardamom, and cinnamon to the oil and cook until very fragrant, before pouring it through the strainer into that big bowl. The hot oil pulls flavor and color from the chili powder. Finally, we stir in our fried goodies and some sesame oil. In terms of using your chili crisp, it would honestly be a lot easier to list out where you shouldn't use it. And even that would be a hard list to come up with. But there's one use that I first heard about from a Food and Wine article by Max Falkowitz in 2018. Teens in Sichuan province were putting chili crisp on ice cream. Yeah, Kenji actually recently wrote about it for the Times. So check this out. We have a classic sundae glass, scoops of vanilla ice cream, and we spoon on the chili crisp. It's just so good. All the crunchy bits work like any great ice cream topping, providing tons of texture and contrast. The star anise, cinnamon, and ginger, they play really well with the vanilla. And most of all, you get big hits of spice that are immediately tempered by the ice cream. Then the Sichuan peppercorns start buzzing. It's hot, it's cold, it's sweet, it's savory, it's crunchy, it's smooth. Let's just say, you will not get bored eating it. So, whether you're sipping dashi, tucking into Kenji's fried rice recipe, enjoying a filthy martini, or devouring chili crisp top ice cream, this is without a doubt how to taste umami. Thank you all for watching so much. Big thanks to Kenji for coming in. His new book, The Walk, it's out now. It's excellent. Grab yourself a copy. I think it's available pretty much, yeah, you guessed it, where books are sold. So, chili crisp on ice cream. Have you had it? Do you love it? Are you driving to the store right now to get ice cream? I want to hear about it in the comments. And if you have any other ways that you love to use chili crisp, I want those ideas too. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.